To complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues, and here are the top stories. The long wait is over for many tourists as they can once again enjoy the beauty of Boracay Island as it reopens today after 6 months of rehabilitation. Though road works and improvements are still ongoing, the PWH Secretary Mark Villar says they have accomplished 80% of Phase 1 of road concreting, which made the roads wider now compared to that in April. Authorities also announced that the rehabilitation efforts on the island will continue for another 1.5 years. The Boracay Task Force, meanwhile, reiterates that they will not allow any casinos to operate in Boracay, even those that previously operated but have been ordered closed.
So we can say to all of you, no casino is now existing in Boracay Island.
Only a few hotels and resorts and resort lodgings were able to comply with the requirements for the reopening of Boracay Island today. From more than 400 hotels and resorts, only 157 were able to open after securing permits and environmental compliance certificates for passing the government's building standards and sewage system requirements. Some establishment owners in the island were compelled to demolish their own structures, especially those located within the 30-meter easement zone from the beachfront. Some of them complained about the waiver that is being required of them before the reopening, saying they felt like the government was taking away their property. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources explained, however, that Boracay is government-owned and the waiver does not constitute land grabbing.
Yung undertaking is if in case in the future kailanganin ng gobyerno yung kalyeng yan, you will post no objection on that, na ibibigay mo yan dahil yan ay talagang sa gobyerno. Ngayon kung hindi ka papayag, then hindi rin namin papayagan na makapagbukas ka dahil yan dapat sa gobyerno yan. Yun. Hindi po inaagaw yung lupa nila.
Another round of fuel price rollback is expected as oil trading slumps anew this week. Oil industry players estimate that the price of gasoline per liter will go down next week 1 peso and 50 centavos, while diesel prices by 50 to 60 centavos per liter. Water consumers, however, will have to pay more next month as increase in water rates will push through. This is after the water concessionaires, Maynilad and Manila Water, decided to defer their respective arbitration case from the Manila Waterworks and Sewerage System. Based on the approved water rate adjustment, Manila Water will add more than 6 pesos per cubic meter, while Maynilad will add 5 pesos and 73 centavos per cubic meter to consumers, billing on a staggered basis until 2022.
Both parties are talking right now and have agreed in principle to temporarily suspend the arbitration case.
Philippine National Police is closely monitoring 9 witnesses it identified to the killing of 9 sugarcane farmers in Hacienda Nene in Sagay City last October 20. According to Sagay City Police Chief Robert Mansueto, the camp of the suspects is trying to intimidate the witnesses. Based on the information they received, a 47-year-old witness went missing after giving his statement. 14 minors who also witnessed the incident are being given counseling at the Department of Social Welfare and Development for the trauma and fear that they went through. A special investigation task force has also been created to focus on the Sagay massacre.
We have already the subscribed affidavit of the 8 witnesses and counting. Problema talaga kasi yung witnesses natin pinipenetrate din.
The Philippine Public Safety College vows a fair investigation as its newly formed fact-finding committee begins its task of delving into the alleged sexual harassment involving 2 freshman cadets and an upperclassman in the PNP Academy. PPSC President Ricardo De Leon says the team, which is comprised of 4 members, have been tasked to carefully investigate the issue and to probe if there had been other cases of sexual harassment within the PNPA in the previous years. It can be recalled that the respondent to the complaint was revealed to be a son of a police general, while one of the victims is a son of a high-ranking jail officer. The fact-finding committee is expected to submit the initial investigation results before the month ends.
We have to really discipline these people, and itong grave offense will lead to dismissal of the cadets. Pero inahayaan natin may due process, but definitely we will really implement kung what is the necessary punishment.
The United States Department of Agriculture confirmed that game fowls infected with Newcastle disease had been recently smuggled into the Philippines. In UNTV News exclusive interview with Dr. Brian Tan, a USDA accredited certifier, said that the ongoing outbreak of NCD in Southern California has been affecting fowls since June of this year. Tan confirmed that some of the chickens that had been shipped to the Philippines were from the said part of the U.S. Tan said while still in the U.S., the shipment's labels are already being altered. Instead of putting Southern California as point of origin, smugglers would change it to Northern California, where there is no record of NCD outbreak. Amid the controversy, Tan recommends that the Philippine government be stricter when it comes to verifying import documents of products entering the country. He also advised the government to further check the authenticity of the documents by calling or coordinating with the USDA if necessary.
I think it started sometime in June or July this year, and it was banned by USDA, quarantined by USDA sometime in the early part of September as quarantine, as NCD quarantine area. So the quarantine area, the chicken is not allowed to move in and out of that area, but the people keeps on doing that illegally.
And for the news abroad, here's Stephanie C. live from Hong Kong. Stephanie, good evening.
Good evening, Diego. More suspicious packages addressed to former Vice President Joe Biden and actor Robert De Niro were intercepted in the U.S. The Federal Bureau of Investigation says the hunt for the sender and analysis on the packages is underway. The agency also reveals that some of those sent to New York locations contained envelopes of white powder, but it was not a biological threat. Nomar Peñaranda tells us why.
The investigation into 10 pipe bombs sent to high-profile Democrats and critics of U.S. President Donald Trump is focusing on leads in Florida, a federal law enforcement source said on Thursday. The source added that all suspicious packages were believed to have gone through the U.S. postal system at some point. Many of the packages had the return address of the Florida office of U.S. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who formerly chaired the Democratic National Committee, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The packages consisted of a manila envelope with a bubble wrap interior containing potentially destructive devices, the FBI said. Each bore a computer-printed address, label, and 6 forever postage stamps. Some of the packages sent to New York locations had envelopes of white powder in them, but FBI Assistant Director William Sweeney said at a briefing in New York that initial analysis showed it was not a biological threat.
And each package was collected by experts, and examinations are now underway at the FBI lab in Quantico. As to the devices located in New York, which contained a powder, the initial analysis indicates that the powder in those particular envelopes did not present a biological threat. Other analysis is ongoing.
Former Vice President Joe Biden and actor Robert De Niro on Thursday became the latest targets of the packages containing bombs, though none of which exploded. Several people who were also sent bombs were former President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, who were frequent targets of right-wing critics. Eric Holder, who served as Attorney General under Obama. Former CIA Director John Brennan, who frequently lambasted Trump. Democratic Party donor George Soros, and California Representative Maxine Waters, another outspoken Trump critic. A bomb was also sent to the New York headquarters of CNN. The Trump administration condemned the bombs but later blamed the media, his frequent foil for much of the angry tone. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders also slammed accusations that the administration is responsible for sending the suspicious packages.
Look, there's a big difference between comments made and actions taken. The president is certainly not responsible for sending suspicious packages to someone, no more than Bernie Sanders was responsible for a supporter of his shooting up a Republican baseball field practice last year. The idea that this is at the hands of the president is absolutely ridiculous.
Leading Democrats said the bomb were a dangerous outgrowth of an antagonistic political atmosphere created by the president. Several politicians, including U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, described the package bombs as an act of terrorism.
It's absolutely terrorism because it's an effort to use violence to make a political impact. That's the definition of terrorism.
No one has claimed responsibilities, and authorities urge the public to report any tips.
I'll conclude by reminding everyone that law enforcement professionals do not care about the politics behind these acts. What we do care about is keeping the public we serve safe. That's it. That's the job, fighting crime and keeping people safe.
Nomer Peñaranda, UNTV News and Rescue, USA.
The United Nations warns that some 14 million people in Yemen could soon be on the brink of famine amid a proxy war playing out between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Let's find out why from Beverly Saison.
The United Nations aid chief sounded the alarm at the Security Council on Tuesday that half the population of war-torn Yemen, some 14 million people, could soon be on the brink of famine and completely relying on humanitarian aid for survival.
There is now a clear and present danger of an imminent and great big famine engulfing Yemen, much bigger than anything any professional in this field has seen during their working lives.
He described the scale of what was being faced in Yemen as shocking, given that only 2 famines had been declared in the world in the past 20 years, Somalia in 2011 and a localized famine in South Sudan last year. A proxy war is playing out in Yemen between Iran and Saudi Arabia. A Saudi-led military coalition intervened in Yemen in 2015, backing government forces fighting the Iran-allied Houthi group. Iran has denied supplying weapons to the Houthis. Lowcock said the United Nations currently coordinates the delivery of aid to some 8 million people in Yemen, and that the humanitarian crisis has been deepened by an economic crisis and continued fighting around the country's key Hodeida port. Yemen traditionally imports 90% of its food. He appealed for a humanitarian ceasefire, protection of the supply of food and essential goods across the country, a larger and faster injection of foreign exchange into the economy through the central bank, increased humanitarian funding and support, and for the warring parties to engage in peace talks.
Beyond the sheer numbers, while millions of people have been surviving on emergency food assistance for years, the help they get is enough merely to survive, not to thrive. The toll is unbearably high.
Lowcock warned that the health of millions of people on survival support for years are now literally collapsing, making them, especially children and elderly, more likely to succumb to malnutrition, cholera, and other diseases. Beverly Saison, UNTV News and Rescue.
More than a dozen people, including children, were killed and 30 others injured in a flash flood near Jordan's Dead Sea. Meanwhile, a group of demonstrators staged a protest outside the Saudi Arabian embassy in London, as officials admit that the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi was premeditated. Here's why from Kath de Maraos.
In Jordan, a At least 18 people, mainly school children and teachers, were killed on Thursday in a flash flood near Jordan's Dead Sea that happened while they were on an outing. Rescuers and hospital workers said 34 people were rescued in a major operation involving police helicopters and hundreds of army troops. Some of those rescued were in a serious condition. Civil Defense Office said the number of casualties was expected to rise as rescue workers continue to search the cliffs near the shore of the Dead Sea where bodies had been found. A witness said a bus with 37 school children and 7 teachers had been on a trip to the resort area when the raging flood waters swept them into a valley. In London, United Kingdom, demonstrators from Stop the War Coalition staged a protest against the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, the war in Yemen, and British arms sales to Saudi Arabia in London. A bus bearing a banner reading "Justice for Jamal" drove past the Saudi Arabian embassy before dozens of protesters gathered outside it, holding banners and placards. Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist and critic of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, disappeared after entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul 3 weeks ago. Saudi officials initially denied having anything to do with the disappearance before changing the account to say an internal investigation suggested Khashoggi was accidentally killed in a botched operation to return him to the kingdom. Saudi Arabia's public prosecutor said on Thursday that the murder was premeditated. And in China, China's Premier Li Keqiang hosted a welcome ceremony for his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe in Beijing on Friday. Li and Abe sat down for more bilateral talks at the Great Hall of the People after their meeting on Thursday. Abe arrived in Beijing on Thursday for the first formal summit in 7 years as the Asian rivals seek to build on a thaw in ties against a backdrop of trade friction with the United States. Abe's 3-day visit is expected to carve out new scope for cooperation between Asia's 2 biggest economies. It is also expected to promote trust, which has been fragile at times since they restored diplomatic relations in 1972. Kat Dumaraos, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the news from the other parts of the globe. Back to you, Diego.
Thank you, Stephanie C. Live from Hong Kong. If Australia has the Great Barrier Reef, the Philippines will not fall behind, as we also have the Apo Reef. Here's why from Brian Evangelista.
The UNTV dive team is very fortunate to be given the opportunity to visit the world's second largest contiguous coral reef, the Apo Reef, that can be found in Occidental Mindoro.
We are glad to know that Apo Reef is the second largest atoll in the whole world, that we are the largest in the whole country. Comes with responsibility, at the same time excitement to share it and promote it in the whole world. No? We are dubbed as the marine wonderland of the nation.
From Manila, the team had to travel for 3 hours to reach Batangas port. Upon reaching Occidental Mindoro, the team then boarded the liveaboard from Concepcion, going to Apo Reef.
Of course, we don't have a 5-star luxury yacht. We using our Philippine banca, but everything what is needed is on this simple Philippine banca. We have toilet and shower with fresh water. We have radio communication also for the safety. We have oxygen on board in case of any dive accident.
The liveaboard is like a floating hotel because for 2 days, we were accommodated with good food and comfortable bed. After 3 hours travel from Concepcion, we have reached the Apo Reef in Sablayan, Occidental Mindoro, a 34 square kilometer body of water that is divided into 3 islands with pristine sand. The dive team is happy to note that the authorities here were able to preserve this marine natural park. Before we plunged to the sea, we saw species of dolphins called the melonhead whales. After the dive briefing that we need to learn, we got into our scuba diving equipment to present to you the hidden treasures of Apo Reef. After the dive briefing that we need to learn, we got into our scuba diving equipment to present to you the hidden treasures of Apo Reef. We saw a school of barracudas, the biggest variety of parrotfish, and some other great treasures. So don't let the awesome wonders of God's creation that can be found in the Apo Reef slip past you. Only here on The Dive this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon after Historia. Brian Evangelista, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
And those are the reasons behind the news, October 26, 2018. On behalf of William Thio, I'm Angelo Castro III. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening.